Hello again. Following the last video I made, where I sort of discussed what I term the tyranny of the rule of lawyers rather than the rule of law in the context of the collapsed alleged China spy trial. I didn't really plan on making another video, but I've come across some kind of interesting material which I'm not really sure that the media are covering it in the right way. So I'll just discuss that, and I've pasted in some interesting information in the description, which may be of use. Now, the first document I've put in the description is a parliamentary document which outlines the evolution of the Official Secrets Act from 1911 right the way through to 1989 when it was amended, and it sort of shows that at the point of 1989 its scope had been widened to the point of to have committed an offence under the Official Secrets Act. You merely had to have passed without authorization information, and it doesn't specify that has to be through to an enemy who may find it useful. So that in itself is interesting. But if we then sort of focus on because there's this obsession with the 1911 Act, and if we sort of focus on the espionage side of it, the alleged espionage side, I don't know whether the two individuals are guilty or not, but if we focus on the allegations of espionage and spying for China, and even if we revert back to this concept of material would have had to have been passed, this is the 1911 version, material would have been had to pass to an enemy who may find it of use, maybe of use to an enemy. Now, there's another case, an historic case, which I've pasted in. It's quite an interesting one. It's worth a read, and it refers to the case of. It's an interesting article. It's referred to the case of George Charles Parrot, who was a naval officer, and he was charged under this espionage aspect in 1913, so before the war. And it's alleged that in 1912 he passed naval secrets or naval information relating to, for what I can see, dreadnought destroyers to Germany between July and November of 1912. And I think it relates to unaccounted for trips to Ostend that he allegedly made, and they alleged passed on information to the Germans. But in 1912, I'm not sure Germany was officially designated as an enemy at that time, because the war, as you'll know, commenced in 1914. Yes, in 1912 they were strategic rivals, and I commented in the book Lost the Races, and in another video I made in Poland fairly recently, that essentially the source of World War I was the inability of Britain to accept the rise of Germany. Germany unified in 1871 after the Franco-Prussian War, and in quick time became a serious rival to Britain industrially and militarily, and wanted its own sort of overseas footprint, i.e. colonies, and Britain just couldn't accept it. And I said, if you'd like to read Churchill's World War I books, the start of his epic accounts of World War I are all about that, trying to contain Germany. But I'm not so sure at that time, because this is a obsession now that and remember, Starmer says it has to be at the time the offence took place, allegedly. So can we say in 1912, when this offence allegedly took place, George Charles Parrott, Germany was designated as an enemy? I'm not so sure. And the trial was in 1913, which was in itself even before the war started. So it's kind of interesting how things get twisted and the law gets bent and manipulated, as I've said throughout the series of videos. But that said, if we continue with the enemy angle and we obsessed with the 1911 and don't make any account at all of the amendments that went through and how the act was broadened in 1989, I've pasted in a paragraph from the Michelle Donnellan document, the designation notice issued to Huawei, and that was in October 2022, signed by Michelle Donnellan, 12th of October 2022. So this was under the previous government, and it would have been in effect at the time of the alleged spying. And I'll read it to you, but I'll paste it in all the same. The Huawei corporate group is headquartered in and controlled from China. It's actually in Shenzhen. I actually visited the Huawei headquarters, and it's pretty impressive, I have to say. I wasn't doing any spying. I was invited, and it was part of an investor tour, and it was very benign and friendly. Nevertheless, returning to the paragraph, the government assesses that the Chinese state and associated actors have carried out and are expected to continue to carry out cyber attacks against the United Kingdom and the United Kingdom's interests. In particular, the Chinese state and its associated actors continue to seek to exploit weaknesses in telecommunications service equipment and or in how providers of public electronic communication networks build and operate their networks in order to compromise their security. Now, I would say that was a pretty decent description of what you would say an enemy is, because you're saying that they are actively working to against your national interests and looking to cause damage, which is fairly a definition of a enemy. So you can see how this whole Chinese spy trial collapse is being completely distorted, and people are lying and manipulating the facts and the law to try to get out of providing a proper explanation. But isn't it crazy? Even if we we go to the point of saying China is regarded as an enemy or an adversary, and yet they're big investors in the economy, and yet they're big holders of guilt, so, and yet we're very keen to trade with them. So it takes back to this ridiculous anomaly that we they're our enemy, but we've got to trade with them. It's absolute nonsense, and it's back to the point I made where Britain has this extraordinary issue where it's not militarily strong enough to confront China, and it's not economically it's not economically strong enough to do without them and decouple. And it shows what an extraordinarily contradictory world we live in. So I hope you find that useful. I just thought the additional information would put things into context, and I'll remind you, don't believe the words of the sophists. Try to be Socratic. Try to question things. Try to cross-reference things. Find the contradictions, and things will look a lot clearer. Take care. Bye.